Now there's a tree with a few black things coming out of it. Must be some sort of fungi on it. But anyway, way a lot of years back, I had a tree surgeon with me. And there was an old tree stump and a big hole in it, like you would think an owl would live in. But anyway, the starlings used to nest in it every year. And then when the young hatched, the starlings would be flying out and in and decorate your car, your washing and everything else. So I decided to get a tin of expanding foam, sprayed it into the hole that winter, and then the next year they couldn't get in. I said to the tree surgeon when he was round with me, he's a local man now, I says, what do you think that is in that tree? He says, oh, he says, that's that old honey fungus, he says, but he says it's a bit unusual. So he was waxing eloquent on the honey fungus and telling me all about it. And then I said, actually, Christopher, it's a tin of spray foam I put in the tree. It's just gone dark with being in so long. Now, there are some very pleasing things in life, and this is one of them here. Being able to bar a gate against an old tree, isn't that nice? There was a singer one time wrote a wee song, and it sticks in my mind because of those simple wee things in life, like that gate and tree. And it was written by a man called Tom T. Hall. And it goes something like this. I love little baby ducks, old pickup trucks, Sunday school in May, and hay. And there's another verse with something like, I love leaves in the wind, pictures of my friends, bourbon in a glass, and grass. And this old tree sort of prompts that sort of memory. Now I'm trying to get into the field here without letting the sheep out. Go on, girls, where you go? Go on. Who's that little black person there? Now I'm just coming home from work myself down at Preston, and the Angus boys are putting out slurry down at Buttoney here. Well, it's actually an Angus steel partnership. The umbilical system's being used to put it out, but the boys are ferrying it out to the mobile tank. So this is a new tractor here. There's only 35 hours on her, apparently. So there's your ferry tanker, your storage tank, your pumping tractor, and the slurry applicator away in the distance there. Tanker's coming up the lane. I could do with a set of those lights in my International. Fold her in. And back for another load. That's her pulling the pipe after. So that's us working on the John Deere here. The slurry's going on out there and out here. And it's a nice quiet job to be in here.
Well out of the road, Ivan.
Yeah. A bit of perfume with it as well is the only thing.
Surely not me, boy.
28, and then me and Pat did 2 hours, so I wouldn't be far away. Yeah, currently 2.5, 3.
So that's us on clamping the pipe here because we're finished this field and we only need a short bit to go into the next field. So we're connecting onto the dribble bar here now. And ready to go. It's tea time, head for home. Now where do you see this here? Who's this rascal? Look at the mess of the road. I'm going to get a puncture. Look at that cheeky fella there. He was just letting on he was cutting my hedges. Well, they're not really mine. You never know, one day you're in somewhere and then you're out. But anyway, that's life. Now that was Robert Harrison there. And when Robert and his brother Andrew were starting out hedge cutting, they did their apprenticeship with me. Now Robert was first class on the hedge cutter, but Andrew, well, that was a different story. We nearly had to tie his hand behind his back because he had a nice level straight road and the top of the hedge was up and down like this. You would have thought the tractor had oval wheels on it. So Robert nicknamed him Oval Andy. There you are.
There was a local farmer who was telling us, and whether he knew the man or what, I don't know, but this boy had been up to Allen's and he bought himself a horse, and he was riding it down to put it, load it up take it home or whatever it was, but the next thing the horse dropped dead with him on the road and threw him off. And there's a bit of commotion about the place, so the next thing the police came on the scene, and the policeman was taking his name and particulars, and then he said to him, "What happened, boy?" He said, "I was just riding along," and the next thing the horse collapsed with me. Right, he says, "What's your name?" And he took his name and he said, what street's this on? He says, "It's Chichester Street." He says, "Could you ever spell that for me?" "No, I could not," he says, "but I'll tell you what, I could trail that horse into my street. I could spell that." My dad was telling me that he was ploughing with 2 horses here, and this field behind me here, when he saw 2 policemen riding past the road on a bicycle, and he had an idea of where they were going, so he hooked the horses up and he scooted up the lane, cut through the fields and in through the back door, and the two policemen arrived at the front door, but my granny held them up and he raced up the stairs and he smashed one of the bottles they had in the house, for that was only where somebody was going to call. But the police got nothing because they had the potty and the dung midden and had it all covered up, and nobody ever thought of looking in the dung midden, and they got away with it. But they were caught at the end of the day, and unfortunately my uncle done the time for it. So that's the story with the potty. Right, there was a man down the road here had an animal. It wasn't too hot looking. It was going to suffer. So he got the vet out to Vet Gilmer from Kirkcobin, and the vet came and he gave it a jag or something. But he says, I'm not giving that much hope. But he says, I'll call back in a few days and have a bit of a look at it for you. So he came back the next day, or a couple of days later, and he says, hey boy, that's a goner. That I'll get in our jag, but there's no hope. That's not going to make it. So somebody in the country had heard word of this place been bad, and he got in touch with him and he says, hey boy, I know a boy who got a bottle from Sam Doherty for a similar case, and he says the whole thing came all right. So he made contact with my granddad Sam Doherty, who lives down the road there, and the arrangement was that he would meet him here at 8:30 the next morning with a bottle. So they traded the bottle and away he went, and the next thing the boy put the bottle in it, and a couple of days later the animal was rallying round, and the vet Gilmer had been doing a bit of a routine somewhere else in the area, and he called in to see what was the score with it. And he looks in and he says, oh my God, he says, it's full of life here. He says, what happened? He says, well, I tell you the truth, I got a bottle from a man and I put it in it, he says, and away it went very best after a couple of days. But he says, anyway, never mind that, I owe you money for what you had done, and I was very glad of you trying to put your best for me. He says to him, I'll tell you what boy, didn't you borrow my money? Maybe you could get me a bottle of that stuff for me. This bike here is a bit famous bike. It was used in the film December Bride, which was filmed up in the Castle Hill there. It was about an odd thing at the time. A girl had a baby, and she was two men in the same family, and she wanted to decide who was the father. So that's the story with this bike. Good night.